Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first ever Rumble exclusive media review. To those who are new to my media reviews, I review everything from fanfiction to manga to books to anime to movies, TV series. Basically, if I have a fancy for it and it catches my interest, I'm gonna fucking review it. Today, however, is a interesting one that completely caught me by surprise, and I mostly found it thanks to, of all things, Facebook. And then I decided to bring my friends in on it after the first five fucking chapters. And before I continue and I introduce my guest on here, I just want to preface something here, ladies and gentlemen. I know I have a review after either the first or the first five chapters of something, or even the first sentence of something. This fucking thing got me within the first three panels. And there's a reason for that, and we'll get to that. But first, let me go and introduce my guest. This is my friend. We call him Bill. He's actually known as Mr. Flair on Discord, and of course, on Wattpad. He's also known. Let me actually pull up his Wattpad. Jag Panther 44. But for this review, ladies and gentlemen, sorry I'm stumbling over my own words. It's been a hell of a day. Bill, why don't you go ahead and give your credentials as to why I brought you on for this review?
Well, I don't really see how there's much credentials I can give because you more or less just listed all of them. As Al here already introduced me, I am a writer on Wattpad. I have a Discord, even though I don't normally share it, and just want to say that it is a pleasure to be here to review this manga that go by the name of Orkson, because trying to pronounce the rest of it is almost impossible for both of us, because before we started this review, both of us were trying to pronounce it to be as accurate as we could with it, and that was proven to be impossible. So I am pleased to be here, and I am glad that I am going to be a part of this review.
And if things go as well as they are, he may be legitimately maybe a return guest alongside Merkham and many other friends who we review stuff with. But here's the thing: before I go into the actual English title of this son of a bitch, one of the authors is Nagami Takashi, and this dude has actually got a few things under his belt, including the airplane version of Groß und Panzer, as well, of course, another one which kind of talks about a manga artist who I'm not even going to pronounce that name. But here's the thing, folks: we're not going to show the manga cover yet. I'm going to read this title in its English translation, and we're going to talk, and me and my friend Bill here are going to give our first impressions of what we thought what this manga was going to be before we saw the fucking cover page, which we will get into, of course. But the English translation of this is History of the Kingdom of the Orkson, how the barbarian Orcish nation came to burn down the peaceful Elfland. For me, I thought this was going to be another, like, oh no, it's going to be like a resistance story. It's going to be like a medieval fantasy type deal. What about you, Bill?
When I first saw the English title, I thought the same thing because I saw the word Orkson, and my immediate thought was like, oh, this is definitely going to be fantasy because the word orc is in the full name Orkson. So I was just thinking to myself, okay, let's see how this goes. And as you said, you're going to be pulling it up here soon. But then when I saw the cover of the manga itself, that's when everything threw me for a loop when I saw it, because I thought to myself, that is a very, very particular outfit that the character is wearing in the cover. And two, that is a very, very particular rifle, word there, rifle, that the character is holding in the cover picture. So that immediately threw, I guess I want to say, the stereotypical thought of fantasy out of my head immediately, because as any of us know, when it comes to fantasy, most people don't think firearms when it comes to fantasy. They mostly think, bows and arrows, swords, magic, and all that kind of stuff, not modern day firearms were as close to what we would recognize as modern day firearms.
So as Bill has been talking this entire time, I have actually you have seen, of course, you're seeing the actual cover of the manga itself, and when looking at the manga, it is honestly really fucking detailed, especially because you have fire in the background. You have the elf who, at first, and Bill here, of course, can agree on this because there's a lot of things here in this manga that are very much so. If you know history, you know history. Is the quote-unquote Native American, quote-unquote? Almost Native American-looking elf? And Bill here could probably back me up on this because I'm trying not to be insensitive or that jackass, but legitimately speaking though, this is, honest to God, a really cool manga cover. Like, you have the orc in the background, of course, who is in a, at first, and this was my bad on my part, I thought it was a Japanese uniform until, of course, until it actually started dropping hints as to what that uniform actually was. And this is what caused me and Bill and every single one of our friends' autisms to freaking kick into overdrive. Because if you know history, and you know pre-World War I history.
Because it is by no means a Japanese uniform.
Oh no. Not even close. Not even a little bit. Not in the slightest. Because here's the thing. And before we go any further, I'm going to say this right now. There are spoilers ahead. Like, a lot of fucking spoilers for all 12 chapters of this manga. But we're going to condense it a little bit because we want to get through this review. Because if we went into every single agonizing detail, we'd be
here all day.
Oh yeah, we'd be here all day. But,
or multiple days for that fact.
Oh yeah, because me and Bill here could just go into autistic detail about everything, but we're not. We're gonna get to the concise plot points and we're just gonna do that. But here's the thing, folks. I am going to read the description of this bad boy because the description is beautifully well done. Gone are the days of swordsmanship and chivalry. Now is the age of gunpowder and war. Our story has two players. The first is Orkson, a unified nation with many demonic races, led by the oft-revealed. I do not know how to say that.
Revered.
Thank you. Revered orcs. And the second is Elfland, the kingdom ruled by the beautiful yet vainglorious elves. Daniru, basically our protagonist, one of our many protagonists, chieftain of the Dark Elves. This is important, I promise you. Has been forced to flee her homeland from enemies she had once trusted as friends in the midst of the forced Dysphoria. She has a fated encounter with the leader of Orkson, the Orkin Gustav. The story does start out a little dark, making you think, oh, it's going to be one of those stories, because we literally open up with our main character who we follow in the story, the Dark Elf Chieftain, who is literally on her hands and knees begging the king to save her people, even saying, oh, you can eat me, or you can basically breed me.
And to give a little bit of context, the background shadow they have of the king himself immediately gives the impression that, oh, this motherfucker is evil. He's going to take advantage fully of everything she just said to him in order for her to get help for her people. And it would make the reader of the manga immediately believe, oh no, I see where this is going.
And it isn't until the next panel where he says, and I'm going to do my best impression of this, and the accent I use will give you a hint. I promise, because this is where me and my friend Bill went fucking nuts over this. I would like to propose another option. And this is what leads into, of course, just this cool fucking thing in details of the first chapter, because it's like, oh, we opened up with that dark bit thing. Okay, how much darker could we get? Oh, ethnic cleansing!
Quite literally, in every sense of the word, I might add.
You think we're joking on this? No, no, no. And this is where we started going into autistic detail because the elves, the light elves, are wearing Imperial Russian uniforms with Martini fucking Henry's bayonets fixed. And immediately my brain went like, and I'm going to say this right now. My first time seeing this, I was like, wait a minute. Something ain't right here. And it doesn't get any better, especially when you watch these essentially Russian elves gunning down dark elves, women and children, just ethnic cleansing.
At that point, even God's going, do you get it? German comedy. Knock, knock. We ask the questions.
And talking more, looking at it from the history aspect, because Al here just mentioned the light elves having Russian Empire-esque uniforms, and considering the fact that they're doing a little bit, a little bit of ethnic cleansing, to put it mildly, what came to my mind immediately was the pogroms, which happened during the Russian Empire when the Russian Empire, or at least forces of the Russian Empire, were more or less massacring and or expelling the Jewish population of the Russian Empire, or at least those who did not align with the Russian Empire.
And you think they couldn't go any more bad? I'm going to this is where it gets kind of fucked up, and I'm going to show you this panel. And no, I'm not going to try and narrate this panel because the very thing, it's like, why are you killing us? It's like, oh god damn it, I have to for this one thing, this one fucking image of this light elf officer who just screams fucking Soviet. Mind you, I know they're Imperial Russian uniforms. I know that. But this screams fucking Soviet. Because it's like, you guys are dark elves, that's why. Like, my god. Like, if you thought this was gonna be like a wholesome, fun, jaunt type fantasy, yeah, no, Buttercup, this is not. We opened up with ethnic cleansing. You ain't getting no happy fantasy.
And also, even though I don't wish to spoil it, I just feel like there needs to be a little bit of extra context here when it comes to why the Light Elves are wearing Russian Empire-esque uniforms. The Light Elves, how do I put this? They import everything in regards to their military stuff. Like, nothing is built by them. They buy it all. So the uniforms they're wearing isn't so much a representation of the Russian Empire. It's literally just the Light Elves being like, yeah, I'm going to buy that real quick.
Mm-hmm. And the journey that we follow the elves, which, yes, they don't... It does feel rushed. A lot of people have pointed this out. Yes, the journey of the Dark Elves escaping the ethnic cleansing does feel rushed. I'll admit that. But when we actually do get to them escaping, it does kind of give off that feel of, like, the many survivor stories that we read about from the past, before World War I, or even during many of the ethnic cleansings, where it's like, oh, we're escaping, we had hardships, many of us died, many of us didn't make it. I legitimately did love the imagery that we saw in this thing, and I'm not showing it because, again, we're trying not to spoil much, but we will spoil just only the key facts of this.
That's putting it mildly, I would say, because, again, as Al said, it is a bit rushed, at least the first chapter is, but it gets to the nit and gritty very quickly, which, again, you could say it's rushed. I think it's practical, in my opinion, because you're not wasting, or at least the person that wrote this manga and the artists that worked on it didn't waste time trying to give an entire initial context as to why the White Elves were the Light Elves, or as even in the manga, at least the English form, they're called White Elves, are doing this. there's just that initial burst of, oh crap, they're literally ethnic cleansing their own people.
Oh, yes. But the cool thing is that there are little hints here and there in the first part, especially once we start learning about the orcs, or at least from this Dark Elf's perspective, the chieftain's perspective. However, we are introduced to one of the coolest fucking characters of all time, and one that both me, Bill here, everyone who I've introduced this manga to has fallen in love with, Gustav Falkenhayn. I said that right, because for those who don't know, Bill is not a Francophile, he's the Prussiophile, so did I pronounce that name right? His last name, Falkenhayn?
Falkenhayn. That's about as close to a accurate translation that I could give, because again, I don't speak German, but I know enough of the German language that when it comes to certain names and certain words, it's very obvious how it would be pronounced.
Mm-hmm. And when we're introduced to Falkenhayn, he is in a very dapper fucking suit, and suit that doesn't really fit the fantasy aspect one would expect. Then again, if you're expecting fantasy, this ain't it, sweetheart. Again,
You came to the wrong house.
yeah, no, you did, but a very German suit. If yeah, no spoilers. They're Prussian. The orcs are fucking Prussian.
And to give, even though, as we said, we don't want to stick on certain things because we'd be here all day speaking about it, to give an extra bit of history context, we're talking about Prussia around the time, in our history anyways, I don't know about so much the history of this world in the manga, but we're talking about Prussia in the time when it was about to become the German Empire that we know of in our history, per se, around like the 1870s, 1880s-ish, when Prussia was going through a major industrialization when it comes to its, not only its economy, but its military, and around the time that we would see Otto von Bismarck go through the endeavor of making it the German Empire, which was the unification of all the German states.
Indeed. I mean, hell, even the map even confirms it, because we do see the map of this world, and the map of this world basically tells you, oh, hey, by the by, this is basically our world, except, magic, demon races, and, yeah, orc is basically Prussia!
And humans are also in the story for any of those are like, oh, I wonder if the humans are going to be involved. And yes, they are involved in the story, and if you could imagine it already, they're the Brits.
And the French, and many other nations. But we'll get to that. I promise you, because believe me, we're still in chapter fucking 1 here. Because here's the thing. The story does follow the recovery. It talks more about what she's seen. And then we finally get back to that conversation we saw in the opening. Gustav has a counter-proposal to what she, the chieftain, had offered herself. She offered herself in body and soul and everything. Gustav? Well, let me just go ahead and read you what he said. If you are truly prepared for that, then I would like to propose another option to you. Wishing for a comeback in the future. It would be great if you and your fellow clansmen could move to Oxen. Just literally, like, oh yeah, I offered myself body and soul. It's like, King Gustav, how about you come to my home?
And that's what, as I said earlier, kind of shatters the whole missive that at the beginning of the manga, he's like cloaked in shadow, and all you see is like the sharp like tusk like orc teeth, and you would immediately assume this dude's evil, he's going to take every advantage of it, and it's going to become some really messed up hentai type freaking manga or some crap like that. But it doesn't, and it kind of blows you out of the water to a degree with what your initial thoughts of him as a character would have been, because he goes into explaining, about the Dark Elves being ethnically cleansed, and about, hey, as Al just said, come to my country.
And then we flash forward to 1.5 months later, where we actually see the king in his very snappy Prussian uniform. I'll be honest here, god damn. But you're thinking, okay, what's this all about? And then we see a fucking refugee camp on the border, and we see kobolds. Not in the sense of, oh, little scaly boys. No, the dog kobolds. They're actually... we see the entire Prussian military here, or at least a small, I want to say, relief force, who are stationed on this border, and they're helping people. They're helping the Dark Elves that are escaping, and we are seeing her efforts. This chieftain is just going back and forth, like freaking Desmond Doss, not in the sense of, oh yeah, no, he would have carried a gun. No, in the sense of, please God, let me save more. And this shit, it is honestly, yes, rushed to a degree, but we are seeing what they're doing. They are killing more of these white elves. We are seeing more about communication magic. We are seeing more about what they are doing to essentially save their kinsmen. And it is beautiful in its detail, in everything. And when the final group does come, we see this honestly wicked image of these elves, these dark elves, coming out of the shadows of the river, eyes glowing. And a nice little key factor here I want to point out, because it's not going to make sense to why their eyes are glowing until you realize they have red eyes. They have ruby red eyes. So I want you to imagine dark elves with glowing red eyes just coming out of the freaking shadows looking like they are. It is metal.
When it comes to this manga, everybody, I would definitely say this is one of those ones where I'd honestly say it should be an anime for sure, and the fact it hasn't become an anime yet is kind of insane to me, because the amount of details and just the art style of it itself is amazing to me. And as we go through this first initial chapter, you can see just how much the Orcsen actually show, I would say, care, like actual legitimate care to the Dark Elves, because of the fact that they're literally escaping genocide and ethnic cleansing. There's no other way of saying it.
Especially when we get solid numbers. Originally 70,000. 12,000 are what was saved and left of the Dark Elves. And the sad part is...
And that's a very big attrition. That's a very big, like, casualty percentage. That's, what would you say, like 60, 70%?
Yep. And this is where it gets very, very deep, because it's like, oh yeah, you think the chieftain's gonna die, because we see this imaging of just, like, it's clear that she's gonna die. And I'll be honest here, I did choke up a little bit because I was really invested in this. And there is a moment where the king is saying that you and your kin are my people, my brethren. You have to understand something. That when a king says that about a certain group of people, especially back then in the time period it's representing, that shit means...
It's rare.
Yeah, that shit is rare, and it fucking means something. And it is fucking powerful. Like, it really is. And chapter 1 ends with just... literally Gustav Falkenhayn, also known as the Demon King, Orcsen King. And you're thinking, okay, what the flying hell? And you'd be right. Until chapter 2 comes around. And then we get a flashback to 120 years ago. To Napoleonic fucking, like, warfare. And I had to literally pause myself and be like, wait a minute, what the fuck just happened? Did I miss something?
It's crazy. In all honesty, that's the best way to say it, because yeah. English. It does skip back to the Napoleonic Wars, or at least what we would know as the Napoleonic Wars in our world. And the immediate impression that I get of the Dark Elves, at least in this time period, would be they're similar to maybe like the Polish Legion that Napoleon had. Which, for those of you that don't know, the Polish Legion was a unit within the French Imperial Army that I may be getting my history wrong here, but the reason they fought for Napoleon is because they were trying to get guaranteed independence of Poland, which I believe by that point in history was under the control of the Russian Empire.
And
when it comes to landmass.
As Bill was talking about this, I actually went and looked it up. Those are Polish Legion uniforms. The Dark Elves are Poles. Oh my god.
And as we review, or as Al reviews more of the chapters and speaks more of the chapters, you will find that there are very, very interesting similarities, not only between certain races and certain cultures and histories from our own world, but even within certain characters. And I don't wish to spoil it, but Al will speak of it later on. Let's just say there's a certain orc that looks very, very, very familiar to, well, not only familiar, but looks very, very similar to a certain person from our own history, and it's involving the Soviet Union. And I'm pretty sure Al here remembers who I'm talking about.
But yeah, no. Continuing on, of course, then just out of nowhere, we're brought back to the present, and then it's like, oh hey, steam engines, and it's just like, chapter 2 is essentially just the establishment chapter, or as I lovingly call, exposition chapter, where we're seeing the Dark Elves as they're settling into essentially Prussia. And you think I'm saying, oh, you're just saying that because of their uniforms. No, the fucking architecture. Because once we actually see the city, the tram cars, the clothes, the thing, and the thing, and the thing, and the things, and everything, and oh my god, this is basically Prussia! It's Prussia!
I think you're blowing out the mic there for a second, my boy.
It is Prussia!
But Al is putting in his own eccentric way. He is very much not wrong. The architecture, the clothing style, and even the housing itself, not so much the architecture of the housing, but the way it's set up. If you look at pictures of like old German and or Prussian cities and Prussian towns, it is very much, this is Prussia / Germany. There is no other way of getting around it. This is Prussia / German Empire before World War One. Like, this is early 20th century Prussia / Germany.
And if you need any more, because here's the thing, we're thinking, oh, these are just the elves. No, we get introduced to their uniforms. The elven uniforms, the Dark Elves uniforms within this, basically Prussia, is the Prussian Polish fucking uniforms.
Hussars. It was like a hussar cavalry uniform for the most part.
Yeah, like and you're thinking, oh no, you're just saying that because again, it's the Prussians and you're reading too deep. Fucking look at it! Look at it! Tell me that is not the Prussian Polish freaking service uniform.
Thing that is interesting about the uniforms, I will say, is it is very much mid to late 19th century in style, because a lot of people that aren't, I guess I could say, aren't history freaks would probably be like, oh, what's the big deal about the uniforms? Well, the thing is that up until World War One and even part of the way through World War One, a lot of countries, except maybe the British, still had, as you would say, bright uniforms. Like they had a lot of blues, a lot of blues, reds, stuff like that. And World War One changed that to where a lot of countries started using gray, started using browns and greens. So this uniform that they're wearing is probably one of the few uniforms that's either a really dark blue or just black.
This is where it gets kind of fun, especially because, again, Chapter 2, like I said, is an establishment. It's a world-building chapter. And, of course, we get to see one of the cutest damn things of all time that I never thought I would see and never thought I would gush over. But we have a little kobold boy in Lederhosen. Lederhosen! Adorable, but I'm getting carried away. I'm getting carried away by the details again. God damn, autism, fucking tree for the woods. Anyway, so essentially, we build more into this world through this king. We start seeing that he is a loving king. He is a people's king. He is a king who legitimately does mingle with the crowds. He actually does buy from the local vendors. He is not a boisterous person. He is a reserved king. And as we learn more about Gustav, we find out that Gustav loves to read. He smokes. But he's not like your stereotypical king of that time period where, oh, he lives in the lap of luxury. He's this, he's that.
He's really down to earth for a monarch. Very down to earth.
He really
That
is.
is the best way of saying it. He's a very down to earth person for a monarch. And of course, there have been monarchs throughout our own history that have been known to be humble and down to earth. But of course, whenever we think monarchs, we think luxury, ostentatiousness, and all that kind of stuff. Not so much humbleness.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, but this is one of the many instances where the manga shows that it did not need to go into this detail. Because it talks about what this Prussia wants the Dark Elves to be. They are essentially the cavalry units that we would see evolve into the coming conflicts that we have in our history. Quoting the manga panel itself, centered around 3 regiments of cavalry, 1 mounted ranger regiment, in addition a mountaineer, artillery battalion, and engineer company, along with supply columns and field hospitals to support them. During wartime, it would form a group of 8,000 troops. They, again, did not have to go into this much goddamn detail because it literally talks about a small mobile division. We would not see this kind of thing until the not even the First World War. No, we wouldn't see this kind of development until the Second World War, where the cavalry went from, oh, your standard, oh, we're gonna go charge in mounted cavalry runs, to, you go behind enemy lines, you scout, you call in our fucking arty, you do this, you do that, you go be the badasses that we know today, and even cemented themselves in the Vietnam goddamn War.
Or it became armored cavalry. Either or.
You know what
because the way of the horse cavalry was to a degree still very much a thing going into World War II, but it disappeared relatively quickly. Like, yeah, there was a few instances in the beginning of the war and then at the later stages of the war, but for the most part, cavalry fell to the wayside because of mobilization and mechanization of infantry, of cavalry, because as we saw in our own history, cavalry divisions traded in their horses for tanks.
Oh yeah, and like I said, a good portion of this chapter does focus on Gustav. And the big thing is that that's all it is. It legitimately just focused on fucking Gustav. But as time goes on, we see more of this world. We see more of how it is. Even going into the 3rd chapter, it talks about how the world is going to change and how magic essentially is going to go away. In the sense of just this, oh god, I don't even know how to describe it because, again, there's so much detail in this manga that I want to go into detail with here all goddamn day, so I'm going to keep going on the plot. We learn more of the many different regiments within this new Dark Elf unit. We learn the different battalion commanders, generals, leaders, captains, lieutenants, their different roles. And again, they didn't have to go into this much goddamn detail, but they did, because the 3rd chapter and the 4th chapter and the 5th chapter, and which is a 2-parter, mind you, is a military exercise. where we actually get to see this military essentially do what a military does back in that day. And when I say military exercise, you automatically think, oh, they're doing this, they're doing that. This is where that autistic detail comes into play. We learn more about the orcs and their capabilities. We learn more about the artillery and the weapons, which Bill here actually, both me and him were like, wait a minute, what?
Excuse me, what?
Before we get into the guns. Because you know me well enough, those who are watching this and those who have known me, especially Bill here, knows me well enough, I love my guns. But the one thing that I was blown away by, and yes, you're seeing the panels up on screen, is they actually show, hey, a military marches on its stomach. They show the cooks.
Logistics. They show actual logistics. And I pointed out because I had a little bit of a moment where I realized, like, wait a second. The one panel on screen shows a wheel-toed cook stove, and that is I don't even know where they found pictures of it or where the artists did the research for it, but that is as close to a real representation of a German army cook stove.
Mm-hmm.
Like an actual field kitchen cook stove.
Mm-hmm. And another element which will come into play later, mind you, we learn about the great eagles. And yes, these massive birds are sentient, they're intelligent, they talk, and the big thing is that, oh hey, we're going to learn more about it, and the cool thing is that he actually gives her a feather that she puts in her cap. Her big fur frickin' hat, which, yes, was a thing. That was a thing actual Prussians did, apparently, back then when they were in Prussia, or Polish, my bad, Polish did when they were in Prussia. And during this whole chapter, we meet Schwein, who is essentially, we've jokingly called, the Orc Rommel.
We called him the Orc Rommel, but when we've spoken about this, when we've reviewed it on our own without doing a recording, I've said he's almost more comparable to, like, Bismarck, with the way he looks and the way he looks in general, more than anything else, gives the impression that he's this manga's interpretation of Otto von Bismarck. Because if you look at a picture or a painting of Otto von Bismarck, and then you look at this character, besides the fact that this character is an orc, you can see where the inspiration comes from.
Mm-hmm. And the cool thing is that it does give a statement in Chapter 2 when we see the chieftain's observation about the country. She talks about, from her personal view, why a lot of the heads of government, essentially, why so many a lot of big people are military. She says, this country, it's not the country that moves the military, but the military is moving the country. That statement right there best describes Prussia pre-World War I, pre-German Empire even.
It very much does, because there's an old saying, whether it's a true one or not is a different story, but there's a saying where Prussia isn't a country that has an army, it's an army that has a country.
Oh, yes.
Meaning that the army is what controls the entire country, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm. And you'd be thinking, oh, yeah, no, that's actually kind of cool. That's actually kind of interesting. No, you don't understand. There's a reason. There's a fucking reason for it. And oh, God, I'm losing the trees. I'm losing the trees. I was
going to say, lock back in, bud. Lock back in.
Okay. So, the big thing is that Chapter 2 also introduces, or Chapter 3, my bad, Chapter 3. The military exercise chapter, the military exercise arc shows us that, oh yeah, military exercise. This is what's going on outside. On the inside, however, they are planning the invasion of Elfland. And the plan, which for anyone who knows fucking history, is called Plan Number 6.
I know Al here will probably show a picture of the map once more, but if you look at Elfland in comparison to Orkson, it's very much reminiscent of the Schleswig War, or the Prussian-Danish War, and that's what immediately I am thinking of, is that the Light Elves are essentially a really messed up alternative universe Denmark, just based on like the actual history we ourselves know. And the fact that they're going into this is very interesting to me, because this is a war that rarely gets talked about, at least in modern history.
Mm-hmm. But the good thing is that we actually see the determination of the Dark Elves, especially the Chieftain, and we learn more about Gustav. And I'm going to read you again from the actual panel of Chapter 3, where he's talking to her about the invasion and kind of reflecting on the fact of 5 years ago they would have defended their homeland before the genocide. Or, my bad, ethnic cleansing. It's a fucking genocide! Get over yourselves! Anyway, I may not act like it, but I look down on people below me with arrogance. I want to... The chieftain looks at him with this deranged fucking face. Not to be made a fool of. So please don't. Do you think we would be discouraged by something like that? And she actually goes into great detail, this emotional speech about the fact of, this is a war for their country, for their people. I was about to go into frickin' Reznov there mode for a second, but the cool thing is that we actually see something between Gustav and this chieftain. And before anyone says anything about, oh, it's gonna be one of those mangas, and no, it is not. Like, they actually become a couple. Spoiler alert, I know, again, we freaking said we're gonna be spoiling this motherfucker, but yes, they become a couple, and that relationship comes from the fact of, this manga has a Isekai tag to it. We'll get to that, I promise you, because they did it in a way that was a breath of fresh air. I promise you that.
Agreed.
But the cool thing is that when the military exercise does go on, again, so much goddamn detail went into this that they did not need to. Especially, and yes, I am showing this, you're seeing it on screen, mind you, which before I do, there are some cute moments, especially when talking about food and the actual, like, mess kits, because I forgot to mention this, Bill here is a DD-214 holder, he is a military veteran, and he can tell you, in the military, because my father was supply, everything in the military is as is. It's basically, everything is uniform. So, you have to understand that for this, especially Prussia, all the stuff is made for orcs, especially the mess kits. And there's this cute little panel where we see the quote-unquote standard issue mess kit for the Orcsan army.
And it is huge, and again, for anyone that looks up German military equipment, especially older German military equipment, that is essentially almost an exact copy of a German field mess kit. Like what you would see field cooks putting food in for the troops, or the troops themselves carrying in their packs.
And so...
the shape and design of it, anyway.
Oh, yes, and it's just kind of funny to think about, especially when you actually look at all this stuff. But here's the thing. When we actually get to the military exercises, we start seeing more information about the orcs. This is stuff that legitimately is good. They even talk about the freaking calorie intakes, which is... Again, they didn't have to go into this, but... Yes! They didn't have to! But they did! And then
it also shows that when it comes to any military, or any military in history for that fact, logistics is everything. Yeah, you can have as many troops and as many elite troops as you can, but it all boils down to nothing if you don't have good logistics and good supply in general.
Mm-hmm. And this is where it gets kind of fun, especially with the guns. Oh my god, the guns. This is where I had my. This is where Bill here will attest to this. I had one of my many autistic moments because the rifles they're firing are, in that universe, is Gewehr 74s, which is a single shot bolt action rifle. In reality, it was actually the Gewehr 71. Which was the 1871 model that actually was a single shot bolt action black powder rifle. However, what really sold it for me was showing the action of what they did. You see them fire, you see them pull the bolt back, you see a bullet be pulled from the ammo pouch. They load, they close the bolt, and then they repeat. This was how they did this in that day.
And as I said to Al, it kind of confused me a bit when they were referring to the rifle as the Gewehr 74, because gun nuts, or at least older gun nuts of older weapons, the Gewehr 74 was a tube magazine Gewehr. It was loaded via a tubular magazine. It was still black powder, but it was a tubular fed magazine rifle. It wasn't single shot.
But again, we can forgive it because, again, they didn't have to go into this much fucking detail, and I goddamn love it, especially when they start talking about the guns themselves, especially per soldier, especially when they start going into detail about the soldiers, which this is where it gets kind of fun, and sometimes people say, oh, that's not right. They have 140 rounds per person. Bill, you wanna tell the people how much ammo you had with modern day munitions and weapons?
I'm trying to remember what the full battle. 6 magazines.
30 rounds each.
If I remember correctly, yep, 6 30-round magazines. I was drawing a blank there for a second. I was actually trying to remember, like, wait a second. But yes, it is 6 rounds, 6 magazines, 30 rounds each. And what makes it a big difference is that these are big, heavy black powder rounds that these guys are shooting. It's not the lighter intermediate cartridges we have of today.
Mm-hmm. And the cool thing is, and this is why I fell in love with the Orc military, because of their actual mindset. Because their mindset of their military is, our fangs are firepower. Our shield is firepower. And we see this. When it comes to our fangs as firepower, we see an Orc soldier with his Gewehr ready to fight. Our shield is firepower. We see a Orcson freaking artillery unit firing a fucking field gun. This is Prussia. Not only that, but this is also America. Like, seriously. You know what, Bill? You're military. You're a veteran. You take over for this and your explanation on this, because my autism's going wild and I need to rein it in.
In regards to the Orcson, at least, I can very much see how their whole thing is definitely firepower and massive amounts of it, because of the fact that they're an army that doesn't really have cavalry, because it is explained, I think earlier in this chapter, or chapter 2, that because of how just massively built orcs are, they can't ride horses. So when it comes to the orcs, that land and sea are more so their area of expertise. So, like, yes, they do have the eagles as like aerial, as like, I guess you could say, an impromptu air force, like an Eagle Air Corps or whatever. But their main strengths are mainly land forces, infantry particularly, and navy. Whereas with, I guess the comparison would be to the current modern American military is, to a degree, everything. Because America, as we know today, has very much control of the land, sea, and air. And the comparison is very interesting, given the complete time differences and the fact that this is a anime manga world in comparison to our own real world.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, but we also get to learn more by chapter 5.1 and 5.2. We get to be introduced to the kobolds. And the,
Not to interrupt, I do have a caveat to bring in.
oh, go ahead.
That's a bit of a fix up,
Go
a
ahead.
bit of a fix to what I said earlier. It was the Mauser Model 71/84 that was the tube fed magazine, whereas the Model 74, which is what most everyone knows as the Mauser Model 1871, is the regular five round stripper clip. So what these orcs are carrying around, I think it's probably even an older rifle than the 7184, because I don't exactly know which Mauser rifle that would be. That would be single shot only.
Again,
My,
little things.
my mind's trying to blank.
Little autistic things. But anyway, this is where we get to learn more about the kobolds. And, well, let me just go ahead and read from the actual chapter itself. The kobold tribe has historically engaged in commerce and finances. Because of that, the literacy rate is high, and they are quite skilled in accounting and bookkeeping. This will come up later, and this is where we're going to have our yikes moment number 2 in the story.
That's one way of putting it.
But no, we do actually learn more about the kobolds, and legitimately, we even get to meet another one. Well, before we get to the next character, who me and my friends, when we were reading this live, actually called Snoopy. But the big thing is we do get a flash forward, because we learn more about the engraving, the runic magic, and how it's actually going to be used, because we do get a flash forward of this. And it's actually really cool how they do flash forward, showing like, hey, and this is another thing I want to mention right now, before it leaves me. This whole story is written like a history book, almost like a memoir, almost like it is a collection of stories from this leading up to this conflict, and how it is basically different perspectives from people who were there at the time, and even scholars' perspectives of that time period. And it is so fucking cool!
Which was the style at the time.
But yes, we do go ahead.
That is one way of putting it. Because it is very, very interesting throughout the manga. It doesn't lose the plot, but it definitely adds more weight. I would say it adds more weight to the manga itself, because it has these little, I wouldn't say side tangents, but it has these little sidebar stories of showing how these different, I guess I want to say, people and these different races that are in Orkson have been influenced by Orkson itself, or specifically what made them move to Orkson in the first place. And not to spoil anything, but you'll notice there's a very, very messed up common factor amongst all of these stories.
And then, sadly, this is where things get kind of fun, or at least sad in the sense of the military exercise has to be canceled because there was an accident. Now, any king would have basically written it off as like, oh, just go send a rescue party. Not Gustav. Gustav actually calls for the exercise to be canceled. And he even says, as he's yelling at the general staff, who's like, but the king, however, in wartime it is wartime, in peacetime it is peacetime. The military sincerity is lacking and we lose soldiers. How can I face my subjects and continue to be a king? Stop it immediately! That shows a king who legitimately not only cares for his subjects, but also cares for his soldiers. Because, and the cool thing is that we actually learn more about this king, and there is a moment that was joked by my friends. And this is where we start to get the hint of the Isekai elements. But when you look at this one panel of the king begging for the rain to stop, well, let's just say that Morgan Freeman doing the narration would not be out of place, if you know what I mean.
It literally reminded me of Shawshank Redemption when, trying to remember his name, I think it was Andy, finally escapes from the prison, and he's like staring up into the rain and everything. That's just what this literally That's what that panel reminds me of, except the context is, of course, different. But I could see if there was an inspiration from Shawshank Redemption, it's definitely there.
Mm-hmm. And the big thing is that as we keep going, we learn more about this world, and we learn how caring they are, and we even learn more about these side characters. And again, all of it is done in a way to where it legitimately seems like, oh, all of this is a historical context in history. And by chapter 5.2, we learn what they have learned, which is essentially, hey, they're talking about how they're going to handle the war. Any other story, any other manga, it would just glossed over and was like, here's what we learned, here's what we did. No, this manga decides to go in depth talking about it, and I don't want to spoil that part because, again, we'd be here all fucking day. So we're going to keep going. It isn't until chapter 6 where things start
clicking.
Oh, yes. Oh, and of course we get the name. Well, before we get into chapter 6, of course, chapter 5.2 also shows the creation and even goes into the world of elf mythology and the name of their brigade. And then, of course, we meet the wolf that has such an uncanny valley face that it causes us to be a little fucking creeped out.
Bad touch, stranger danger.
Yeah.
I will not be showing that on screen because I don't want to scare the ever-loving hell out of you. So no, I'm not going to do that. But there's one moment where it shows an absolute metal fucking wolf. And even so, it even has the saying of throw them into these jaws. Like, seriously, does that not seem like a fucking thing out of a goddamn power metal song?
Definitely does, and considering the fact it's a wolf saying it, it almost immediately makes me think of it would be a lyric heard in like a Powerwolf song.
Oh yes.
And for those of you listening that don't know who Powerwolf is a, not to get off topic, but Powerwolf is essentially a German power metal band who has this whole werewolf motif to them. Like, that's their shtick. It's very, very interesting, and I'd highly recommend their music.
Oh yes. Now, chapter 6 does actually go into the organization of the Elf Brigade, or in this case, the Dark Elf Brigade, now renamed the Infangile Brigade. I may have butchered that. I don't give a shit. I'm having way too much goddamn fun with this. And the cool thing is, again, they go into detail of how this happens. Organization, formal training, military terminologies, the pain of it, even going into the fact of, oh yes, forming a new brigade needs a budget. And I love the little thing, yep. And here's the funny thing. When in one panel which says organization is the term used to allocate a budget to create a unit, you see the orcs in parliament, where it's like, budget approved. And it's just, my friends and I were having fun with this little panel even. It's just like one guy getting up like, wait a minute, no, budget approved. Even the little kobold here is like, seriously, budget that's approved, sit your ass down.
And the way the panel looks, it's like very, how do I say it? It's very much, I wouldn't say scribble, but it's very much like quickly drawn. And you just, like, the guy standing up with the glasses on, it says immediately budget approved, and there's one guy raising his hand in the background, and then there's another kobold, like, looking back at him, like, what is it? Like, what is it you have to question right now?
And then, again, they didn't have to, but they did. They went into detail about it. But the cool thing is, again, we get more world building. We see the formation and the parade, and the cool thing is, when we get to this formation, they didn't have to do what they did, but they actually give us the names of songs in this world. And to those who understand music, who understand the songs, you know exactly what they are. Like, Glory of Orksen. Oh, you mean Prussian Gloria? And
yeah, it kind of stands out.
Yeah, and of course the official army march of O our King. Oh, you mean the Prussian song that basically talks about the Kaiser and all hail to the Kaiser? We even see human military leadership. We see freaking Polish, we see Russian, we see fucking Japanese. We even see just this detail of the many different uniforms of this military unit who is Polish. These are Polish Prussian uniforms, and the marching, everything. Just ah. And you think, oh, they couldn't go any more than that. No, they have a fucking song. They actually have a song, and the song is goddamn metal.
And it goes back to the whole how militaries, they don't so much use them nowadays anymore to a degree, but it goes into the fact that a lot of countries and a lot of militaries back in the day legitimately, I would say up until the end of World War II, maybe a little later than that, they had legitimate marching songs. They had legitimate marching songs that they would sing while marching, or they would sing during certain formations, such as a parade like this. And it goes in, and this particular song goes into the Dark Elf saying, hey, long story short, saying, hey, let us get to fighting. Like, let us get to fighting the Light Elves because of the bullshit they did to us.
Let me just go ahead and read you the goddamn lyrics, because it's literally Infengala. For us, the silver tree is no more. Neither forgiveness nor mercy remains. Hatred is endless like thirst. With dry jaws, bite down. With blooded jaws, tear and kill. Because pity and compassion are useless. Hurry up and let us devour and slaughter those light elves. And the last panel that shows this is so... I would not...
It is metal. I will admit that it's metal as hell looking, because
that is an Iron Maiden
it's dark,
cover.
They're darked out. Like, all the dark elves in the last panel of that song, they're all darked out. All you see is their eyes and the slight details of their uniforms. And the flag of Orkson, which, for those of you that ever looked at the old Prussian Empire flag, it's very much that, but instead of an eagle, it's an orc's head.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's an orc's head.
No, that's a wolf's head. That's the unit's...
Is it a wolf's head?
Yeah, that's the unit's flag they're marching with. And that's the other thing. This is a unit's flag, and they have a freaking roaring wolf on their head. It is so fucking good. And this whole thing, I know. We need to get back to the plot. We need to talk about this thing. But let me just geek out. Let me have this. This would not be out of place on an Iron Maiden album cover. Okay? It would not. Like, I could see Eddie in the background, just like fucking saluting these motherfuckers.
Needs to be made into an anime. I know I've said a couple times already since we started this, but it needs to be made into an anime, and if it doesn't, it'll be sad if it doesn't get turned into an anime, because I'm not much of a manga reader. Al here can tell you that. He almost had to force this anime down my throat just for me to read it, and I'm glad that I did read it. But when it comes to most other manga, anime, I don't overly indulge in that stuff that much. But this is one of the few times that I will say that this definitely should be made into one, for sure. It definitely should be made into an anime. And all I can hope is that it has a good team that makes it, good voice actors, and a good budget when and if that time ever comes.
Mm-hmm. And this is where it gets even more fun, because we hear Gustav talking to them, and you can tell his sincerity in his words, which I will, of course, read for you. Members of the Elfengel Brigade, cast out of your homeland without cause. We of Orkson welcome you from the bottom of our hearts. You chose to take up guns and cannons yourselves to serve our nation. I will never forget that choice. That is why this place is now also your homeland, your fatherland. Let us share our glory together. And this is where...
You added in the fatherland part, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
You added that in because I was actually following along with you, and I'm like, wait a second, that's not even in the stand. That's not even in the quote. That's not even in the speech bubble.
Like I said, this is where this monk, because it's Prussia, I can't. You will, to those who actually understand and actually start liking Gustav. It's like King of Orksen. No, as the Kaiser of Orksen, Kaiser Gustav Falkenhayn. Was es?
I feel like they use king just for the fact that it's like a direct to English translation, so they probably didn't directly look into the whole, I guess I want to say, German/Prussian aspect of it, so they probably just went with king to be safe. But you consider the fact that, as we've said up to this point, anyone who knows an inch of history would look at the orcs and be like, yeah, they're Germans, or yeah, they're Prussians, and probably immediately be able to make the connection that, yeah, he's like this country's version of the Kaiser.
And you're probably thinking, what is the first mission of this newly formed Dark Elf Brigade? Royal Guard.
What the fuck?
And this is where, again, this is where it gets kind of fun because, again, didn't have to go into this detail, but they actually show the Royal Guard. They actually show, like, hey, they are doing these precision marches. They're doing this elegant thing, this showmanship, the twirling of the rifles and everything. And it is just didn't have to do it.
They really didn't have to. Apologize for the short pause there. I was like taking a drink and I didn't want to like try and talk, but
no, you all right, brother?
But they very much go way further into detail for things than they probably needed to. And for some people that may be seen as clutter and like unnecessary details, but to many others it's very intricate to the main story and the main plot, because you don't want to get the impression that this manga is one of the ones that has this short little amount of plot story and then it just goes off on a tangent into war, violence, or other things. But this is actually story building. This is actual character development. This is very intricate details that you normally see in books, at least in my opinion. You normally see in full-on novel series books, not as at this point that's translated, a 12-chapter manga. This is not something you normally see in a manga like this. You normally see this in full-fledged books, documentaries, and movies.
And then chapter 6 is where we get that Isekai bit. And like I said, there's a lot into it, but what it essentially comes down to is that the Elfin Queen, the third queen, was originally human. Even talks about the reincarnators. And then she starts bringing up the fact of Kaiser Gustav. Talks about terms and stuff that shouldn't even be a thing. And even as she's smoking, looks at him and says, Kaiser, my Kaiser Gustav, are you not the same? Perhaps once a human from another world? And it is really good, and this is that element I was telling you about early on, and this is where me and Bill are going to put on our amateur psychologist hats and kind of go into it. Because she starts breaking down the many feats he did, starts talking about the stuff he overheard. And then when we actually start hearing about this, and he actually starts talking about the world he came from, there's a panel of her interpretation. And before I show you this panel, I want to kind of bring up the fact of many other mangas and many other animes, when they talk about their world, it's like, oh, there's a leisure jet, oh, there's a freight train, oh, there's a liner, there's a speed train, this, that, da. Not this manga! Not this one! And this is the fucking panel that proves it! We see a giant metal eagle. We see a giant ship with sails on it and a fucking castle. We see a train with wings on it. And it is so fucking good.
He's a human that more or less came from what we would consider a modern age. Airplanes, like, sorry, airplanes, bullet trains. I don't really know what the ship would be interpretation of. Maybe a cruise liner,
Cargo
or
ship.
like just a really huge, massive cargo ship. But you get the idea that this guy definitely did not come from, like, he didn't go from our world's timeline of this era that's displayed in the manga and went essentially back to the same exact time. No, this fella went from being a human in, I would almost want to say our timeline of jet planes, massive cargo ships, and very, very, very fast bullet trains, to this era of horse-drawn wagons, steam trains,
Black powder,
and like steamboats and all that kind of stuff. So I can only imagine, and I think he goes into it in the manga. I can't exactly remember, but I think he does go into how much of a shock that was.
it is, because he says, especially when talking about rocket ships to worlds, he says, ever since my childhood as an orc, those words alone had remained in my memory. After the Battle of Roslin, which I recited them, the rains would fall, and little by little I began to recall that other world. On that point, your deduction is correct. At first I thought I was simply dreaming something, but little by little those memories of the other worlds grew clearer, and eventually I sometimes couldn't tell which was the dream. This world that resembles that one so much. This is a breath of fresh fucking air, because it's showing, it's not oh, I'm a reincarnator, I'm such an OP badass, I'm going to rebuild this car. No, this is
Man's
someone...
literally having an existential crisis. Like Owl probably is showing you the panel right now, and I don't see it, but I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the exact panel he is referring to via my phone, and the king, or just say Gustav, he's legitimately having an existential crisis, because the memories of his former life and the memories he's created and has made in this current life depicted in the manga are literally blending together to the point that there's almost no difference between what he was and where he was as a human and where he is now as a king of an entire country. So the man, well, from what I'm reading, since he started regaining all those memories of when he was a human up until now, has continuously had an ongoing existential crisis of, when does he stop being that person? When does he stop being the person from that other world?
And again, not a lot of manga do that, and I legitimately love that. I love the fact that they actually do go into the psychological implications of this, because it all comes back to the I think, therefore I am. In this case, it's two sides. It's literally like a split personality trying to figure out, which am I? Am I human? Am I orc? Am I this? Am I that? Am I in a dream world? Am I in the real world? It is such a deep psychological thing that we decide to skip over it and go to the actual chieftain trying to ask the king, of course, or the Kaiser, why he never tried to lay a hand on her. And we learn, no, it's just, he's a polite gentleman. He's not going to do anything for that. And it's just, this is where that relationship kind of comes into play, and then it also kind of comes to the fact of this one and only dick joke that makes me laugh. The fact of, the elf is a Mauser rifle, while the king is a fucking cannon.
Fucking cannon shell, yeah.
That won't fit.
Oh my.
At least that's what he thinks. But it's a little different, and
Our boy's hung a little bit if you catch the drift.
but after she basically tells him, hey, we're not as fragile as humans, they'll probably be fine. Boy over here does something that most isekai protagonists won't do, and it's like... They're gonna make Whoopi. Go make Whoopi.
And then after that little somewhat wholesome fact, we get to the bitches themselves.
We get to the elves. And we learn...
The light owls, to be specific.
Yes, the light elves. And we learned something about them that, oh dear.
They're eugenics. They're eugenicists, essentially. Just gonna get that out of the way immediately rather than beating around the bush. They're eugenicists. They are the equivalent of what the Nazis wanted to try and be, and what other peoples throughout history have also tried to be. That's the quickest way of saying it. Just to get it out. You can actually... Wait, quick question. You can actually use that term on Rumble, can't you?
Yes. And this is where it gets
I just want to make sure, because I know YouTube itself is very, very nitpicky.
And this is where it gets kind of fucked up, especially when we get a statement of disgusting. Those blacks serves them right. I'm like, this was my other moment of like, oh shit.
This is like, ooh, context. It's like context. Because I'm like, oh boy, this could be interpreted in so many ways, depending on who the reader is.
And the fucked up... And again, don't worry, I'm showing the panels. And then we get another statement of, in other words, the filthy dark have been swept clean from this country. With this, even Her Majesty, the Queen's heart, has finally found peace. And with this, the peaceful nation of the elves has become even more peaceful. To prosperity.
Yeah, they're...
What the hell am I looking at?
Yeah, they're just straight up Nazis. There's no other way of saying it. They're basically just straight up Nazis, because as you will find as we go through more and more chapters, yeah, they do not like anyone that isn't
human.
Light elf. Yeah, they don't like anyone that isn't light elves or human, and the only reason they even like the humans because the humans are the only ones that will sell to their racist asses. That's literally it. The humans are the only ones that will actually deal with them, and I'm pretty sure the only reason the humans deal with them is because they get a good deal.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably it. I think it is brought up. That's the only reason why, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's brought up by one of the British foreign ambassadors that's the only reason that it's not... What is it called? The Kingdom of what? British?
The Kingdom of... Because there was a map. Let me look at the map. Let me look at the map here real quick.
Albany.
Yeah, Albany.
Kingdom of Albany.
Yeah, Albany.
Kingdom of Albany is like the British, more or less, just to cut a long story short.
Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. By the 8th... And I know I'm skipping 7th or 8th chapter because, again, the site we're using, the 7th chapter, was just a repeat of chapter 6. But basically, by the 7th or 8th chapter, we see basically the lives of the chieftain and Gustav. And while, yes, they're naked in the sense of, like, hey, it's artistically naked, tastefully naked. And we see more of the relationship deepening. And then, of course, we see of how the world sees Gustav. They see Gustav as this grandfather, basically. This person who legitimately you want to sit down and listen to about the past. You want to listen to his stories. And we see the ambassador, Claude Maxwell, envoy of the Camelot Foreign Ministry, posted in Orkson, who he himself was this. And then we learn more about the history of this world, where it's like, oh yes, they had a Napoleon. They had a freaking Morlington. And they had a Waterloo.
Duke of Wellington. Well, they had okay, for context, the Gustav talks about Great Duke Morlington, which is essentially this world's Duke of Wellington. He is this world's Wellington, and there's a reference later on in the chapter at some point where I don't think he gets mentioned by name, but you see a statue of Lord Horatio Nelson,
mm-hmm.
as well.
Mm-hmm. And the cool thing is we see the first of many things that Gustav has done to strengthen his ties with the other nations for the planned invasion of Elfland. Because yes, that is the big, like, endpoint here. Because, and really skipping along here, because again, we could go into detail of every single chapter, but we're just going to get to the key points. He has a treaty of friendship and trade with Camelot, which is Britain, mind you. And they love it. Like, it's like, hey, we can't really do anything, because if we do anything to Orkson is the only people who's actually keeping these other nations in check. And we have, like, oh, this nation attacks us, they attack them. Oh, this nation attacks them, we help them. They attack this nation. It's literally just...
So did I get the countries wrong then? Did I get the countries wrong? Camelot's the British, then who's... Albany's the French.
Yep.
Isn't that who that is?
Yep, Albany's the French.
I am so sorry. I don't know why the name Albany sounded very British to me, so I just went with it. I just said Camelot, and then my brain clicked into place like, oh, I got the nations mixed up.
No, you good. But what I love about it is that the flags themselves are very much so like, oh yes, this is the people we know, but it is very much so this is another world. And it is legitimately really fucking good at how they've made this map. Like, legitimately. And
I can't wait until we get to the
invasion.
No, I was about to say I can't wait until we get to the foreign minister of Orkson.
Oh yes, and he's excited because again it's getting there. But again, this whole thing is, it goes into detail about how important Orkson is to the other nations, how important they are, especially when it comes to a saying, a very important saying that I will of course have on screen right here. Two sayings took root in foreign circles, as when he once kept faith with Duke Morlington riding to the battlefield. The king of Orkson never deceives humans. Orkson never breaks its treaties. This is important. This is important later on, so keep that in mind. It's important later on. But essentially, it's like, it's political theater, because once we actually get to it, especially his 4 points, like, he actually does write down his 4 points and gives it to the Camelot ambassador, which comes down to this. Again, putting it up on screen. Orkson does not seek war with Elfland. If, tragically, war breaks out, Orkson will still safeguard Camelot's interest in Elfland. Even then, Orkson will not neglect its defense against Gloria, or Glorer, or Rovana? Basically French and Russia.
Ravarna, yeah.
Yeah, basically French and Russia. France and Russia. We have no interest in human lands, such as agreed with Duke Morlington. This, again, this is important. This is important. Important point number 2. Later on, I promise. Important point number 2. And then we get to the foreign minister. Who is this son of a bitch right here? Clemens Borlo.
I said it to Al, like, as soon as he popped up on screen, I'm like, this man, this orc is Vyacheslav Molotov. And for those of you who know history about the Soviet Union, this guy is this Bulo, or however you pronounce his name, he's literally this manga's interpretation, or at least I'm seeing it as this manga's interpretation of Molotov. And Molotov in our world's history was as close to being the right-hand man of Joseph Stalin as you could get. Like, as close as you could get. And what I mean by as close as you could get, Molotov could openly argue and have debates with Stalin, and as far as I know, did not have to worry about being sent to a camp or executed.
Mm-hmm.
And as you will see in the manga, as Al goes along, he very much fits Molotov's demeanor, because while, yes, Molotov could argue and fight with Stalin, he was still very much a sycophant to Stalin. Like, there was always like a yes, no, like he would always almost agree with Stalin on everything except for the few things that they did fight about.
Mm-hmm. And then by chapter 9, which most of chapter 8, or 7 or 8, is basically just fluff. You know, just kind of lovely things, talking about the brigade, all this other stuff. But chapter 9 is where things really start getting fun, and we get introduced to a new figurehead and another character who is known as Madame Isabella Franzi. Basically, Isabella, who is the head of Faranzine Trading. And to those who know about the trading companies back in the day before World War I, you know damn well they were pretty fucking powerful. Point of this chick here actually does have, like, oh yes, their military foreign intelligence, like military intelligence. Yeah, no, they would actually get it from, and I had to look into this. I had to actually look into this. No shit, a lot of nations actually use their foreign companies to spy for them, and the companies had so much fucking power that, using a Cold War analogy here, Pepsi was so fucking powerful that they actually bought a fucking Soviet aircraft carrier.
I believe that was towards, I know what you're referring to, I believe that was towards the end of the Soviet Union, or like right after it collapsed, because the then, what was left of the Soviet Union, or what was then the beginning of the Russian Federation, was flat broke. Like, as flat broke and bankrupt as you could get, so they needed, like, as much money as they could get their hands on. And so Pepsi, at one point, no shit, literally had one of the largest navies in the world because of how much shit they bought from the Soviet Union before selling it for scrap.
Thing though, Isabella, it is said in the manga that she has so much power, and here's how powerful she is. Her trading house has a finance firm, factories that make telegraph and electrical devices, fucking is the largest corporation in the nation, has so much wealth and power overseas that she could literally crash the human economy and then recover it in the same damn week. She has fucking spies all over the damn place. But majority of them is in Elfland. And this is where Yikes number 2 comes into play. Because of her backstory. Because her husband and her did have a store in Elfland. And then there were protests against the kobolds. And I'm just gonna put up a panel.
It got bad.
I'm just put up a panel here, and yeah, her home and many of them were burned down and hung.
What the hell?
The kobolds are the fucking Jews.
They're treated like them anyways, yeah.
And
because her family's business had the storefront destroyed, burnt down, family home burnt down, and I believe it might have been it was her husband, and I believe maybe a worker or even a child that were hung and killed.
It was her husband, and that's what we need to focus on right now, is her husband was hung and killed, and she declares that this is my war, a merchant's war. And goddamn her face at that moment. It is
it's very Uncanny Valley, but it's Uncanny Valley and it's demented looking at the same time, not even gonna lie.
Yes, and then we continue on the story itself, because there is a lot to go into, guys. I am not even joking, and we're just trying to get to the bullet points. I mean, Jesus Christ, we even get a backstory of another character who actually talks about, like, oh, yes, he was smart, he was good, he is a genius, and he's looking at this map of Elfland, trying to go through all these plans to actually, he has books, he's getting all this stuff, and he is trying to figure out a way how to invade Elfland, and even talks about the proverb that is in Orkson, a tale that drags, which talks about the logistics of war. It is so... It is so...
And by the way, this man is chain smoking cigars like he has the last supply of cigars on this earth.
Yeah, he is.
Just pointing that out. He is chain smoking cigars, and not like the little little Black and Milds you'd buy at the local gas station. No, I'm talking full-sized cigars, like the ones you'd see Churchill or guys like that smoking. He's chain smoking these things because of how stressed out he is trying to plan this entire thing out so it doesn't go belly up.
And this is where it gets kind of fun, because he was landlocked by the Army's views until he figures out, hey, Elfland has ports. And one of them is literally at their one of the many main rail hubs that connects directly to the capital. And of course, there's a lovely little thing of him absolutely going batshit insane, but we're not going to cancel that. We're going to keep moving forward. We're going to move forward.
Yeah, he crashes out. That's all I gotta say is he crashes out.
But we do also get a lovely look at the Navy, as well as the ironclads that they have, and just this lovely thing. It's, again, there is a lot to go into, but we need to keep going forward because we're only on chapter goddamn 9. But we do learn more about the Elfland, especially the Navy, and the fact that they have 2 ironclads. Which, to those who don't know what fucking ironclads were the ships that we had before battleships. Before we had dreadnoughts. These ships are a threat to Orcson's navy, but if they can take them out, then they can win. And the cool thing is that it even talks about the fact of these were peaceful days, and to anyone who knows about war, peaceful days are what comes before the conflict. And chapter 10 is where we start seeing this start ramping up. We start seeing more about this. We start seeing more of the preparation of this. And dear God alive, does it ramp up?
It does quickly once you get into chapter 10, I believe.
10, 11, and 12.
Yeah, it ramps up super quick, like 0 to 100 quick.
Yes, because chapter 10, we do learn more about our... Again, I like calling him Orkson Ramel. You like calling him Orkson Otto von Bismarck. He is apparently, when you see him from the military, he is a very much a determined person. He is a self-read man. He actually was illiterate, taught himself to read and write. He is a cool character that you're gonna love, but we're gonna keep going. We gotta get there. The thing is, we actually get to see the new formation of the Army Air Corps. And again, this is something that you don't see until World War I, but here it's like fucking...
And it's not Army Air Corps with the way many of you would probably think of. It's not actual airplanes, it's not the first initial airplanes or anything like that. It's literally the giant eagle that we saw earlier and the other eagles that are with him. Just to clarify, it's not an Army Air Corps as all of us would think during the initial days of World War I, where airplanes were first starting to become a thing in our history.
Yeah, it is the Army Falcon Corps, which is... Oh my god, it is... Again, we could go into great detail about this, but goddamn, we've been going on so long already. We gotta go. This, though... This is where I'm going to stop and do into a little detail, because we then look at the dwarves and how the dwarves were wronged by the elves. And this is a moment where we see the old generation against the young generation, and how it's... Because I'm just going to read this. The army has put in order of not just 300 iron boats, which is the same material for the bridge laying. Also 24 120mm guns and 12,000 rounds. As well as over 4,000 pieces. And when they find out that it's been 2 months since the order was placed, the
old man freaks out.
The father yells at his son he is a fool and to mobilize every worker.
Because he knows what this is. He knows the old man's been around long enough that he knows what this is. This is war mobilization. This is war industry kicking in. This isn't peacetime. consumer products, or this is in peacetime. Hey, the military asked for, like, say, 300 rifles or something like that just to keep up with stocks. No, this is full-on war mobilization. This is war economy and war industry kicking in.
Not only that, but this chapter 10, also shows us how their intelligence works, how spy works. It's like, oh yes, we are just oceanographers from the university watching the whales. Yeah, sure you are. You are spies.
They're watching the Elfland Navy. That's what they're doing. They're watching the Elfland Navy to see what they're doing.
Not only that, but we see how the civilian sector is treated, especially the state shipping. And how, oh yes, this CEO is brought in and has a very lovely mustache, if I might add, very good mustache.
And I find it, he's very nervous at first, too. He's, like, very jittery, very nervous about getting civilian merchant ships and civilian cargo ships brought into the war until he realizes who the war's against. You want to explain that?
When he finds out who the war is against, he talks about his time in the service. And I'm going to translate this. I'm going to read this. Deputy Chief, my heart trembles with joy that such a day should come. At Rosenrand, all my brothers died. I alone survived.
When he realized who Grabenk, I think it's Grabenk or Gabenk, is talking about when he says in the panel, our nation's greatest problem, old man locks in immediately when he realizes who he's referring to, and it's just like, yep, you're not going to have any trouble with me. You can have all of my company's freight ships and cargo ships as you need.
And the end of the chapter is, of course, the king with the cavalry general, the field marshal of the cavalry, as well as, of course...
Very old man.
Oh, yes, who... As well as, of course, the Dark Elves' leadership as well, because they are a cavalry unit. And it's like, oh, you know, a 57mm mountain gun, but larger? And then we see a fucking Gatling gun!
Or as it's referred to in the anime, the Gluckston Ring Cannon.
Yes. And you mean manga, not anime, which that's fine. Anyway, moving on.
Did I say anime?
Yes, you did. But here's the thing,
I meant to say manga.
But here's the thing. When they see the devastating power of the Gatling gun, America, they actually say, what madness.
Which is surprising to me that they don't know what the Gatling gun is up until this point, but yet again, depending on when it was made in this universe, I don't exactly know, because the Gatling gun was a thing.
But before you get deep into that, here's the thing. The king assumes that this is amusing, this is great for them. But when you start seeing their faces, which, yes, I'm putting them up on screen, mind you, the chieftain actually says, not amusing. Truly not amusing at all. And you're probably before chapter 11 and 12 came out, me and Bill here were like, that's it? That's it? What's going on?
Yeah, cut off on a cliffhanger for sure until chapter 11 came out.
Chapter 11 being called The Point of No Return. And the king actually explains that about 10 years ago, during the Century Stars Civil War, which means America confirmed, this was made by a doctor of the northern people, which again, true. And then we find out why everyone is so upset. Because again, this was an actual thing back then, when machine guns started coming up, when Gatling guns started coming up, the cavalry as a military branch would cease to exist. They even talk about this in the manga. And even talking about the formations that would be made to fight cavalry. It just... Oh my god. Bill, I'm gonna let you take over on this one, talking about this, before we get into the next, like, fucking...
Yeah, because... And I'm, like, pointing this out just for like, I guess I want to say emphasis, is he goes into, like, because he said about America being involved, and, well, not involved, but mentioned, is, and she says a doctor created this thing, which is true. Like, Gatling himself Richard Gatling was a actual medical doctor. He graduated from the Ohio Medical College. But besides that, the chapter goes into, like, they're freaking out because they're thinking this is the end of cavalry, which to a degree they're not wrong, because the end of the cavalry age came about during World War One, and fully came to an end during instances during World War Two. But to a degree, they're not entirely wrong being worried that, hey, this is going to put an end to our job, essentially. And the king goes in to explain, like, hey, it's not going to go away from cavalry. Like, cavalry is not going to be obsolete, but the original purpose of the cavalry, or at least one of the original purposes of the cavalry, will be obsolete, which was frontal charges.
Instead, he talks about the fact of they're going to be doing flanking maneuvers, dismount, fight with firepower. It's the same as the infantry. Now that's where it's heading. We'll charge once only when the enemy is weak. And then the cavalry field marshal actually says, "Mein Kaiser!" That's his...
Not cavalry, it's mounted infantry.
Yeah. And he is crying. He is devastated. And I can understand why. This is an old guy who has been a cavalry officer for God knows how long. And he even goes into detail about, the chieftain actually goes into detail. Like, just look at the agricultural labs. New techniques and innovations were always faced with some innovations were always faced with some backlash. This is true. My autism is going crazy. That's why I'm stumbling over my words, because of how great this fucking is. Anyway, as time goes on, he actually does talk to the chieftain, and even says that he will entrust 6 of the first Gatling guns to them and tells them to master them. And does. But this is where it gets kind of sad a little bit. The field marshal tries to resign from the Second Army, and even says, "Find a younger man in my place." That does not fly over well with Kaiser Gustav, who actually goes to his residence and even sits down and talks with him, and we see this heart-to-heart, this honestly heart-touching scene. And to those who are in the military, or even know or who've actually talked to older soldiers, it even talks about it. It talks about the fact of he has gratitude, and the fact of, nice little Three Little Pigs reference, by the way. We lived in thatched huts, shared scraps of food, then it became wood, then bricks. And now I live in a fine home. I no longer fear tomorrow's bread. Let you lead us stubborn folks that far, mein Kaiser. No, if I think back, all of the suffering you endured. No sighs, no words, no thanks could ever repay it. And because of that, I cannot burden you. Find someone younger. The king...
Even the king himself kind of breaks down, because he's seeing a officer, not even just an officer, but a man he's known from when he was a kid, or at least when he was reincarnated in this world, going along with the Isekai element. He's known forever, essentially. Like, this old man has been around, as Al just said, when this area of Prussia was still thatch huts. Like, it was still what you would think of when you imagine, like, Germania, like Roman Empire era Germania. He's lived since then, or at least part of it since then, up until now. Like, old he is.
Yes, and
it's very sad, because you see the fact that he's, to a degree, admitting he doesn't think he can do this anymore.
Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is that as time goes on, we see, well, as he actually whispers some words to him, he finally gets his second win and does say that this poor self will do what must be done. And then, of course, there's a very lingering thing until we see playful Gustav again, who actually goes and buys these large acorns from a seller. And we learn more about how the fact of oh, he planted these acorn trees that you can't eat. And yes, here's the thing, folks. A lot of people think you can't eat acorns. There are certain acorns you can eat. There are certain acorns you can turn to tea. But that's another video for another day. Essentially, it goes into more world building as a king and the fact of what he's done for his people. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this. This is a food manga as well. It does go into food. But that's another thing altogether. And again, I love it. I really do, because it's like, oh, it balances this balance between this wholesomeness, this dark, this real history, all of it. It's just, Bill, you wanna finish off what I'm trying to say?
I would say it's funny because even I would say Daenerys, or how you pronounce her name, even she freaks out because she's like, you can't eat these. And then then Gustav goes on to explain, like, oh yeah, you can eat these ones. And it goes on, it's like very cute, very like wholesome moment of them just like chilling out in the carriage, eating these acorns and like talking about like everything.
But then we get back to politics, where we see Claude Maxwell again, as well as another special envoy, Sir Martin George Austen, who actually...
He's a sir, so he's been knighted as well.
Yes, who actually shows that he loves Orkson. He actually is fascinated by it, even going as far as getting private books from Gustav, who actually trades private books from his library as well, even formed a very close friendship. But that is where things get kind of...
This is when he goes from 0 to 100 real quick.
Because they've been waiting for a just cause. It's like, oh yes, the genocide of the Dark Elves, that could have been good enough, but that is a flimsy fucking excuse, because that could be torn apart by the international community of that time, where it's like, oh, you want to help them, what about the rest of these genocided people? What the Elf Queen does. Oh, what this bitch does. I'm going to read this. I'm going to read this verbatim. The letters were brief. One was in Elvish, the other in Camelot tongue. The main content was, do not interfere in our domestic affairs, confirming it in writing. No mention of the Dark Elf massacres. Just typical wife-elf wordplay. Or so it seemed. Therefore, the Kingdom of Elfland reserves all rights to the Sven River basin and demands Orkson never interfere again in writing.
Essentially demanding a return letter from him saying that the Orkson won't interfere with what the elves do and won't even stop them from, technically speaking, illegally land grabbing land that belongs to Orkson.
Yup. And here's the thing. The Sylvan Basin, that is Orkson territory.
The Sylvan River Basin.
And you could see it on screen too. It even talks about the fact of diplomacy as a battle of words. A single word can decide the tide of matters, and the word that Elfin used were far too reckless.
Oh, now you fucked up. Now you fucked up. Now you fucked up. You have fucked up now.
I'm going to voice this as best as humanly possible. Such insolence cannot stand. Envoy, look, this is the royal letter. Leave our land in the Sylvan Basin, confirm it in writing. What an insult!
And even I'm just gonna call them Brits. I'm sorry, but I'm just gonna call them Brits because they're from a country literally called the Kingdom of Camelot. I'm sorry, but I'm just gonna call them Brits.
Just keep going, get to it.
Even they are like, oh, even them, they're looking at the letter like, oh boy, this is not good.
In mine 220 years of rule, I've never seen such brazen insult impudence.
Got a little word mixed up there, didn't you?
I mean, I was basically, legitimate
impudence, yeah.
Yeah, but no. And the funny thing is that you see them scared in the panel, and not only that, but he reinforces that we thank you for your mediation, but as soon as they're gone, Bullhole, we have it! This is our reason for war! It's the justification that we needed! This
Molotov, this orc Molotov lookalike is cheesing. He is smiling from ear to ear hearing this.
As soon as word reaches it, this is where things go. Again, chapter 11.
This is where everything kicks in. This is where everything kicks in.
And not only that, but they do it in a single word. A single telegram. Silver. The moment word silver is sent out, the invasion of Elfland had begun. Full mobilization. And we see that in Chapter 12. Chapter 12, we see the full mobilization. We see how it takes 12 days. And just to put in perspective here, because this is where we're going to kind of show how much we have changed. Because nowadays, we can be anywhere in the world within 48 hours. America, at least. But back then, it was a major undertaking to move. Not only gather, but also move 500,000 troops. That took 3 days alone. It took, and again, this is where it gets kind of fun. And even Bill here can back me up on this with actual historical significance on this. In their world, 15 years earlier, it took the French to invade the Italians 4 months to mobilize.
To get ready. Just to get ready and mobilize.
700,000 men.
And for the orcs, it takes 12 days.
Mm-hmm.
Not even 2 weeks.
Yeah. Because they've been planning this. They have been planning this for so long. And they even hid the letter from the public until the time came. And here's the thing. Camelot is trying to still do diplomacy. And they even hid this from their soldiers, where it's like, oh yes, the troop mobilization was called a drill, which meant that they had draft notices. They called in the people who were on leave. They called in everyone.
Conscripts. They called up everybody.
Even the chieftain and Gustav shared Knights of Passion because it's like, hey, this could be our last. And the Elf Brigade, the Dark Elf Brigade, are basically the first army's vanguard to spearhead this assault, this invasion. And it is so much detail of this. And when we actually do see more of it, we see the Navy even assembling. We see how they're saying, are you unhappy about this? Because the Navy is not as large as Elfland, which is, again, real-world significance. The Prussian Navy wasn't even that big. And it just keeps going, and we see more of this. We even see it. They get actual good coal, not the cheap coal. No, they're being given good coal for their steam engines. Even the soldiers are kind of confused. It's like, man, we're being really packed in here. What's really going on?
Then they're being given, like, essentially top, as close as you can get to top of the line, frontline rations as well, besides good old hardtack, always present no matter what universe, apparently.
But they're also given fire spirit, which both me and you what that means. Schnapps! Warms you to the bone.
And that's actually funny because up until, I don't think a lot of armies do it anymore, but it's actually interesting to see that they added that little historical significance because a lot of old armies back in the day did have, like, liquor rations. They actually were given, like, the Navy had grog, and then armies had, like, whiskey or beer or anything along those lines. I think the French at one point had cognac. It's very interesting to see that old little historical significance where armies actually did have a liquor ration that went along with their food.
Yup. And here's where it gets fun. We learn more about, and this is something that actually is real. We see from the railway maintenance folks, especially a lovely thing that again was true. And yes, they did this. They actually used the flathead shovels to cook breakfast, which is of course eggs and sausage. And again, this is true. They even talk about the fact of, oh, there's a lot of troop trains. That's the sixth one that passes them. And the sergeant who is there even tells them, keep quiet about it. But when the soldiers do get to their destination,
we see the camp, the army camp.
And it hits them. It finally hits them that this is war. And all of them are breaking down in tears. Some are looking at pictures that their kids drew them. Some are crying. Some are having like a nervous breakdown. There are other shots where we see towns lined up, bands playing, flags waving, people cheering on their brave men and women of Prussia, brave boys of Prussia going off to war. And even the Dark Elves, the soldiers running around telling them, hey, assemble, all those who are drafted, assemble, mobilization. And
it's like a bunch of them are literally grabbing extra supplies, like they're grabbing, I'm guessing, what are like bags worth, and I'm talking massive canvas bags worth of carrots and
potatoes and food. Stuff. And
it's like time to go.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, and get a nice little cute moment where it's like, hey, I know you're sad that our friends are going to go to war, but why don't I take you to the capital, to this cafe where they talk about sherbets. Which, yes, sherbet ice cream has been around for a good long time. And we, again, that nice fucking food anime. But again, it's very much shows that just how important this is, how this is going to be. And the chapter ends with these ends in these panels.
Can I read this last panel here, at least this one anyways?
Go ahead.
If you don't mind, because I have it up on my phone.
And go ahead.
Generals who lived only for war, staff fresh from academies, majors who read the skies, teachers turned officers, lieutenants once at the post, grim-faced NCOs, sergeants risen from the ranks, blustering kind corporals, soldiers once sausage sellers, dyers who fed families, prostitutes, porters, gamblers, bosses, weapons, ammo, horses, all had stories, field guns once iron and timber, mountain guns loaded by railwaymen, shells finished by master smiths, inspected, cartridges, horses raced across the seas, all of it controlled, ordered, wagons later farmed for decades, gathered in a vast planned confusion, an army of by magic does not appear one day. Absolutely not. And that's where I'll leave it.
That's where the chapter does end. And this is just chapter 12. Yes, the Raws are still going, and there's even a cute little modern day thing, like a little omek, but here's the thing. This manga, and yes, this is a long-ass video. I know we said we wouldn't try and go as detailed as we could, but you gotta understand, this is a really good fucking manga. And if you're asking the question of, is it worth the read? Are you fucking serious?
I would very much say it's worth the read, and as I said at the halfway point, I'm not someone that normally reads or pays attention to mangas by any stretch of the imagination. I would very much recommend this one.
I would too. From the detail, the research that clearly went into actually being as historically accurate as possible, the world building, the art style, the weapons, especially the people, the characters, we come to love these characters. We come to want them to win this war. And the fact of, yes, this is a historical thing. Yes, this is basically saying this is a historical account of this war that is coming, and we want to see this war. I say this now. If you have not seen or read this manga, there will be a pinned comment, or at least somewhere in the description, a link to this manga. And I want you to go read this. Go look at it. Go buy it. There's actually a Amazon link to a physical pre-order where you can buy this manga. I want you guys to support these guys. I want you to go do this. I legit want this to be an anime.
Agreed.
But were there anything that we think was bad about the manga? Well, okay, I know we've praised it. I know we have. And it may seem like we're stroking the author's dick, but here's the thing. The only issue I have is the first chapter. It felt a little rushed. They could have done a little more with it, I'll admit. They could have added maybe something more to it, but at the same time, it felt legitimately like a pilot episode. It felt like, hey, it's meant to get you into it. What about you, Bill?
I agree to a certain extent that it was indeed rushed, but I feel like it was rushed in a proper sense. Like, you got the initial burst of details of what's going on in the manga without getting too into it. And the only aspect of the manga that I myself, to a degree, have a tiny, and it's very like minute details, is we don't see much of what's going on in other nations, in the sense of, like, we don't see what's going on with, and I understand that it's like the manga is still ongoing, it's still being created and worked on as time goes. It's just, I wish we would have seen more of just what's going on between Orcs and Elfin. Like, hey, what's going on with Camelot? What's going on with the Rovarna and all these other nations who are primarily humans? Because we do see the interactions with the Kingdom of Camelot, with the foreign ambassadors and everything. I just think it would have been interesting to see little snippets, like little side stories of, like, hey, what's these nations' take? What's this particular nation's take on what's about to happen or what's going on? But that's it. Like, that's really my only significant criticism.
I completely agree, honestly. Like, legitimately, I wish that there was more to the world building, but at the same time, I get it. It's written in a way to where it's a historical story being basically told to the next generation. And I love that kind of storytelling. Like, I legitimately do. That kind of storytelling is something that you don't see a lot of manga doing. And the only one that sorta did it was Gate, but even then, that's debatable. This actually treats the audience like we're in school. Like, we are learning about this in school. And not in the sense of, oh, you're in public school, this is what you need to do, blah, blah, blah. No, like, you need to pay a fucking attention. This is your country's history, goddammit. But I might be reading too deep into that.
Maybe just a little bit. Maybe just a little bit. But other than that, I really have no major criticisms for the manga as it stands right now, other than the one I mentioned. I just really wish, whenever this does end, whenever this manga does end, it somehow, some way finds its way into being made into an anime, because I really do think this would probably be one of those animes that's very niche, to a degree,
Oh,
but would also still be very popular.
Oh, you say that, but then here comes Yojo Senki with its historical stuff and its World War One.
That is a fair point, but as we've seen with some animes, it's like they start off being like underrated and niche, and then they get blown up. You know what I mean? That's where I'm coming from. Is I believe it would probably be a niche anime if it does get made into an anime up until a certain point, and then it will just be like it'll become a cult classic depending on how it goes.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And I hope that the studio that picks this up is the same studio that gave us Yojo Senki, Overlord, fucking ReZero. These amazing fucking stories. I really want that company to pick up this anime because they have been known to actually give a shit about their animation, their audio quality, actually getting the sounds of guns, actually doing everything. I want that. But we've gone on long enough, ladies and gentlemen. We could go on about this for fucking hours, and we've done that before. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the history of the kingdom of the Orkson, how the barbarian Orcish nation came to burn down the peaceful Elfland. And, as always, I've been AirsoftAL. I've been joined by Bill, the resident military veteran who is honestly really good. Go check out his stuff if you can on Wattpad. He actually writes some really good stuff. Who knows? Maybe he'll be inspired by this to make a story similar to this. Like, who knows? Like I'd actually love to see your take on World War One, honestly, or at least like pre-World War One.
True.
And if you think there's a manga that would tickle mine and Bill's fancy, or one that, or even an anime that would tickle our fancy, let us know in the comment section down below. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, I've been AirsoftAL, he's been Bill, and we shall see you in the next one. Till next time, later.